Can anybody hear me?
Yeah. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't hear over all that music. It's like the Planning Commission theme song.
I can fix that.
Thank you, Mr. Snell.
He likes that kind of stuff, though. He goes crazy back there when he hears that stuff. So, is everybody here? Looks like we got more or less a quorum, I think. Okay, well, Dave, we can start whenever you want to count us off.
We will begin broadcasting in 5, 4, 3.
Good evening, everybody. It's August 23rd. It's the Pinole Planning Commission. And have a couple things to talk about here. Not talk about, but just the usual stuff. Due to the state of California's declaration of emergency, this meeting is being held pursuant to authorization from Governor Newsom's executive orders. City Council and Commission meetings are no longer open to in-person attendance. And if you're watching this, you figured out how to see it. To participate in during public comment, it's a little bit different. Members of the public may submit a live remote public comment via Zoom video conferencing. Download the Zoom mobile app from your Apple App Store or Google Play. If you're using a desktop computer, you may test your connection to Zoom by clicking, it says here, but you can test, there'll be a way to test that on there. Zoom also allows you to join meeting by phone. So from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android, it is https://us02web.zoom.us/1/85372-687-051, or the easy way would be to do zoom.us/join. Our webinar ID is 853-7268-7051. And there are some phone numbers. You can call in. One, area code 669-900-6833, or area code 253-215-8782, or 346-248-7799. And speakers will be asked to provide their name and city of residence, although providing this is not required for participation. Each speaker will be afforded up to 3 minutes to speak. Speakers will be muted until their opportunity to provide public comment. And when the chair opens the comment period for the item and you wish to speak on it, please use the raise hand feature. And if I only know how to do that, I tell you how to do it. Or press *9 if connecting via phone, which will alert staff that you have a question or a comment to provide. Once you have been identified to speak, please check to make sure you have unmuted yourself in the video conferencing application, or press *6 if connecting via phone. So it's a little bit different. I guess that's how the City Council is doing it too. So hopefully that wasn't too complex. You can also still submit public comments during the meeting via email to dhanham, HANHAM, @ci.pinole.ca.us. And then comments received before the close of the item will be read into the record and limited to 3 minutes. Please include your full name, city of residence, and agenda item that you're commenting on. I think that's all that. So I'm calling the meeting to order. And so let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, and now we'll do roll call. Mr. Hannum, you can take that away.
You're muted, Mr. Hannum.
Is he still muted?
I'm
Okay,
still.
there you go. There he is.
There he is. Commissioner Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Benzuli.
Here.
Commissioner Wong.
Here.
Commissioner Current.
Here.
Vice Chair Moriarty.
Here.
Chair Benuelos.
Here.
The records show that all the commissioners are present and can take action on any items with tonight's meeting.
Okay, great. Okay, next move to item C, citizens to be heard. David, do we have any citizens who'd like to comment?
We don't have anybody in the queue right now, at least from where I'm at.
Willis, I do see someone on the queue, someone by the phone number ending in 5748. I can allow him to speak during public comment time.
Okay.
Okay, as speaker by the number of 5748, you are free to speak at the moment. It looks like you are muted, so you would have to mute yourself. If you're on the phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm a longtime resident of Pinole, over 40 years, and I've participated in the past these meetings and the city council meeting, both live and in writing. And I had 3 questions tonight. One was related to the upcoming new business agenda, but I'd have to announce it now because in the description, whoever writes the description on the Planning Commission for new business item G, it's very vague, and I think you owe it to the community and the viewing public to be more descriptive in what is the new business that we're discussing. All there was a short one-liner saying three quarters plan, and it said information and discussion. Well, number one, is it a guessing game? We're supposed to guess the 3 quarters to be able to participate or prepare for this discussion or meeting. And I think you should take it upon yourselves now to pre-announce it before you get to that subject, so people have the time to think about it and or call in and participate in that new business item G agenda item. Secondly, I wondered what was being done with the Dr. Scott Lee's building, the exterior. The last time it was brought up several months ago, you said that he was in communication with the staff and the Planning Commission regularly, that they were going to tone down the colors, the stark white color on the exterior of the building. We have yet to see that done. It's still the original stark white paint. So did he agree to that or not agree to that? Or is it the city can't uphold their agreement or verbal arrangement with Dr. Lee to tone down the colors on that new optometry building he has on the corner of the Kaiser property there? And lastly, I would like to also mention that there's still the ingress-regress problem that the City of Pinole Planning Commissioner and the Planning Commission and the planning manager approved for the ingress and regress, where there's 2 or 3 big orange cones still warning the public and tire marks all over the curbside going in and out of the Kaiser building on those 2 major driveways. The one over there at the dialysis center, Starbucks entryway, and the main one across from Sprouts. They should do something to plant some shrubberies there and put some signage there. And lastly, what is being done on the Pinole Creek erosion problem that has been brought up in writing and verbally several times with the commission, the staff behind the Sprouts bowling alley, creek erosion bank. It's a major problem now, and it's still there, and we're waiting for the next rainstorm to come, I guess, to be more reactive rather than proactive. Thank you very much.
Sir, can you state your name for the record?
He muted himself.
Did we lose him?
Oh, here we go.
Oh, okay.
Sir, if we could get your name.
James.
Sir, if we could get your name. James.
It's James.
James. Thank you.
And I had previously left my email address and my phone number in the past, but no one has responded to me. And under the Brown Act, you're not required to do that, but it was a courtesy to leave an email and or telephone number, but the city and or the commissioners never responded to any of those letters or public comments in the past meetings last year or this year. Thank you.
Hey, David, he had a list of things here. Are there anything on here that you have an answer to right now, or do you have to check on these and get back?
One of them I can answer right now, and that's regarding the Scott Lee building. The colors were agreed to upon back in 2017. However, we did, working with the Planning Commission, agree to a new landscaping plan that would help hide the building in a sense, or help the trees to help offset some of that off-white. The trees were planted; they're all in right now, so now it's just a matter of growing, them getting bigger. And it looks like some of the landscaping is getting bigger pretty quickly. So that is taking away some of the building color. Regarding the related item tonight it's a if I can answer this one real quick, it's just basically an intro to the 3 corridor specific plan, informational only for the commission, kind of like we did with the general plan, just a very entry level. We're not looking to change the specific plan or any way. It's just introducing it to the Planning Commission and looking at the different corridors. So tonight is going to be a fairly just be an intro and maybe some discussion regarding some of the corridors. So that's all that's happening with that item tonight. The other 2 items, the creek behind Sprouts, I should have an update with you based on my last discussion with Development Services Director Miller. So I'll be able to comment to that in my report. And regarding the ingress and egress, the 2 or 3, I'm not sure what's happening with the barrels. That I'll have to research and see what they're doing with. I'm not quite sure what's happening out there. So that's something I'll have to check with Public Works and see if there's a project going on out there or what. So
Okay.
Those are my responses.
Okay. Well, it sounds like James here on a good night in terms of the specific area plans, because the answer to that would have been the entire thing. So to hear kind of a basic thing on what that was, and since I was involved in that 10 or 11 years ago, maybe I'll be able to say some stuff that I could fill in as time goes on. So, okay. Do we have anyone else that'd like to speak, David?
There are no other hands raised at this time, Chair.
Okay, so if anyone pops up and they identify themselves as wanting to speak, we can probably still do that. Okay, so going on then, old business, we don't have any. New business, we're going to talk about the specific area plans, and in general, these plans occur at Pinole Valley Road, Appian Way, and San Pablo Avenue. Each one of those areas has a specific purpose and because of their own specific characteristics. So with that, I will let staff do their thing.
We should probably adopt the minutes. We should probably
okay. Sorry about
do
that.
the minutes first and get that done first.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So we do have to do, accept the meeting minutes from last time. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes from before? Okay, seeing none, Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 28, 2021 meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you need to do, can we do a verbal vote, or do you want to do one by one?
We need to do one by one.
Okay.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Benzuli.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Current.
Aye.
Vice Chair Moriarty.
Aye.
Chair Benuelos.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. So now we will go on to new business. So, David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the course of the last couple, well, at least my last year or so here, we've been talking about a lot about our general plan and our specific plan. And so what I did with the general plan is did a brief summary of all the chapters and just kind of an overview. And I put together a little PowerPoint tonight to get us through some of the particulars with the specific plan, and just kind of go over some of this. I mean, as you're aware, the City Council adopted the 3-quarter specific plan in 2010. Over the last 7 years, the city has been governing San Pablo Avenue, Pinole Valley Road, and Appian Way using design guidelines and land use standards from the specific plan. Over the course of the last 6 months, the city has received 5 multifamily residential projects totaling approximately 600 units over the 3 corridors. 2 of the projects are located in the San Pablo corridor. 2 are in the Appian Way corridor area, and 1 is in the Pinole Valley Road corridor area. And of course, over the next few meetings, what I'd like to do is just review the specific plan and its relationship with the general plan and zoning ordinance, and the potential of each of the corridors for both residential and non-residential developments. And so, if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just kind of, an introduction to the 3-quarter specific plan, very general. The specific plans are governed by the California Government Code, section 65450 through 65457. Of course, just as I stated before, the city of Pinole adopted the 3-quarter specific plan in 2010, and it covers, of course, the 3 major corridors of San Pablo Avenue, Appian Way, and Pinole Valley Road. If you go to the next slide, please. So just kind of what I've done is I've taken the headings of pretty much the government code sections to tell you kind of briefly what a specific plan does, what its purpose is, and we'll go into more detail. We can go into more detail and use our specific plan to be able to do that. But pretty much, this specific plans were put together for communities that wanted to have more specific planning in specific areas. As you know, general plans are general policies and plans and implementation measures, and you have a zoning ordinance that governs the whole city. But a specific plan takes an area such as San Pablo Avenue, such as Pinole Valley Road, such as Appian Way, and more detail is given to those particular areas in what we call a specific plan. And so as it reads, after the legislative bodies adopted the general plan, the planning agency, which is the planning commission, may, if so directed by the city council, which is the legislative body, shall prepare specific plans for the systematic implementation of the general plan. So basically, specific plans are the next rung down from general plans, and which again gets more specific, and all of the area within the specific plan is also covered by the general plan. And of course, the specific plan includes text and diagrams, which we have in our 3-corridor specific plan. The specific plan may address other subjects desirable for implementation of the general plan, meaning that it could include a lot more landscaping requirements. It could require additional parking requirements. It could include additional zoning regulations in terms of height and setbacks and all of those types of things that you can govern within just those areas. And of course, a specific plan is to be made and adopted is the same manner as a general plan. The only difference is that some specific plans are adopted by resolution, some are adopted by ordinance. Ours was adopted by an ordinance, which means that anytime that we amend it or anytime that we have to do it, we have to go through an ordinance amendment process instead of a resolution resolution process. So, and of course, the specific plan doesn't have the same, in terms of amendments, a general plan can only be amended 4 times a year, where a specific plan can be amended as many times as necessary as the planning commission or city council feels is necessary to change those standards. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So, so again, a specific plan must be consistent with the general plan. Also, it talks about no local public works projects being approved, no tentative map or parcel map, which a tentative map was not required, may be approved. And no zoning ordinance may be adopted or amended within an area covered by a specific plan unless it's consistent with the adopted specific plan. So once you adopt your specific plan, those are the rules and guidelines within those areas. So if you change a zoning district or a setback or a development standard outside the general plan area, the specific plan area, it doesn't necessarily apply. It could if you amend the specific plan to have those development requirements, but it's not necessarily the same. Of course, and then it talks about the legislative body, may impose specific plan fee upon persons seeking government approvals, which are required to be consistent with the specific plan, i.e., building permits, other legislative, judicial actions that we can, for the purpose of maintaining the general plan or maintaining the specific plan. And of course, the last and not least, but any residential development project that's consistent or any zoning change is undertaken to implement and is consistent with the specific plan for which an environmental impact report has been certified is exempt from the requirement of CEQA. And so that's important because we have a lot of projects that are coming through, and we'll look at some of the strategies that the city is taking in terms of projects being consistent with the specific plan. And so that's where that came from pretty much. So next slide, please. So pretty much as we get to our 3 corridor specific plan, the purpose of the chapters with it, they wanted to facilitate the revitalization of San Pablo, Appian Way, and Pinole Valley Road commercial corridors. These corridors have been designated as priority development areas, which is actually, this is all taken out of our specific plan. Our priority development areas are locally identified infill development opportunities areas. There's a local commitment to developing more housing along with facilities and services to meet the day-to-day needs of residents in a pedestrian-friendly environment served by transit. What that means is a lot of those areas are governed by, mixed-use zone districts that we use. We use the residential mixed-use zone district. We use commercial mixed-use zone districts. So it allows for those transitions of neighborhoods or corridors, and then to meet the needs of those residents. Our specific plan will be used as a regulatory and economic development tool that the City of Pinole can use to guide our development along the 3 corridors and to take advantage of these underutilized properties and other assets. So there are a lot of properties that they might have. And what we mean by underutilized, it's like, for example, you've got a 1,400 square foot building on a 25, 30,000 square foot lot where it can be utilized for additional development, whether it's commercial or residential. Or if it's a vacant lot. So we look at all the lots within those 3 corridors, whether they're vacant or they're underutilized, meaning their maximum potential. Okay, next slide, please. So just kind of go through, and these are kind of like when the specific plan was developed, these introductions of the San Pablo Avenues and Pinole Valley Road and Appian Way, these were kind of the initial assessments of those roads, being that San Pablo has a diverse history as a major thoroughfare in the East Bay, and home to important industrial land uses, community aims of attracting new retail and service industry while achieving more diverse residential development that can be served by transit. And of course, we're starting to see that. We've got a couple new developments that are coming along San Pablo, and so it is kind of changing. We got a lot of small businesses in our downtown, so it's kind of changing a little bit from where it was. We still have some of our industrial uses, but not as many as we did, and a lot of those properties are being looked at for more residential and commercial mixed-use type uses. Pinole Valley Road's history is a shopping and service corridor attracting new retail, medical facilities, higher density residential development. while simultaneously improving open space access, enhancing the creek, and as well as improving automobile flow and pedestrian and bicycle circulation. You basically have kind of like I say you have two Pinole Valley, actually three Pinole Valley roads. You have the historical area where it breaks off, and you have Tennant and Pinole Valley Road as you go towards San Pablo Avenue. And then you have the major retail accessing I-80 as part of that major commercial on both sides of I-80. As part of our industrial and commercial base. And then further down, of course, we have our residential areas. The specific plan actually stops at pretty much Pinole Valley High School, except it does include Pinole Valley Road, includes the road, but pretty much all the development of the specific plan pretty much stops at the high school and those areas right around Ramona and Pinole Valley Road is the last major intersection of the plan. Appian Way's history is a large-scale shopping, medical care, and service corridor, attracting new retail and higher-density residential development while simultaneously improving open space access, automobile flow, and pedestrian bicycle circulation. Appian Way, of course, it leads to all of our major regional commercial in terms of on Fitzgerald. It also leads to a majority of our residential development out in what I would call the Terra Hills area. As well as area to the south of I-80. There's a lot of commercial mixed use and existing commercial down there, and towards the very end of Appian Way, right about the city limits, there's some residential mixed use down there with some bigger underutilized properties that have potential of being more open to residential development. And of course, we do have one project, a residential project on Appian Way that'll be coming to you at 2151, the old hospital site. So again, these corridors are always kind of in transition. You want to go to the next slide, please? Okay, and just again, this just shows you where they all are on the map. I kind of color coded based on what we had on the map. The orange arrow pointing to Pinole Valley Road, the red arrow pointing to San Pablo Avenue, and of course the yellow arrow pointing to Appian Way. So these are all three of our major corridors, and where primarily all of our major developments are happening right now. So with most of the city being built out, these corridors are being retooled. They're being redeveloped. They're developed in terms of vacant parcels. So that's where the majority of the developments are. Go to the next slide, please. So this is what the vision of San Pablo was within our specific plan. And Tim, these probably look very familiar to you in terms of what Old Town, in terms of strong sense of place, is the city's cultural civic area. San Pablo provides vital economic development opportunities that supports the diverse use that serves the needs of our local residents and visitors alike. San Pablo can support several pedestrian nodes where visitors can park once and walk to several destinations, which a lot of that's in our downtown. But I think as San Pablo redevelops into kind of some more residential uses as we go west towards that, I think those will start filling in with more service-oriented businesses that will help complement the residential development that's coming in. I think the residential has kind of got there first this time, and maybe some of that commercial stuff will follow. Service area will come, which then allows for the next part of the division in terms of several pedestrian nodes and also development standards to support pedestrian scale buildings and promote coordinated street furnishings and enhanced landscaping. So, I mean, those are things that we're looking at. We've added landscaping to the projects that are coming on to San Pablo. So that will provide a different look as people are coming in. As the landscape grows, I mean, it's gonna be hard when the trees are fairly little, but give it 5 or 10 years and it will start changing the landscape of what we're looking at. So go to the next slide, please. The vision for Pinole Valley Road, and basically it's to maintain charming scale and character for our existing residential neighborhoods. And of course, as you're aware, I take Pinole Valley Road and kind of Tennant as you get past Henry Avenue, in that as you're going towards San Pablo, it has the old charm, the old style houses in the 20s and 30s, as well as the Queen Anne cottages as you get on the Pinole Valley roadside. And so, but it gives you that sense when you drive past Henry and you start getting into those residential areas at the Y, what I call the Y. It is a different look, and we need to make sure that we can maintain that over the course, whether it's through architecture, if there's businesses that keep the shape of the housing, or there's more housing that comes in that looks similar, either redeveloped housing on vacant parcels or redeveloped houses if the structures are bad and they want to demolish and rebuild, that they meet those historic qualities. In terms of the circulation system, Pinole Valley Road actually probably has the most of the two corridors in terms of actually pedestrian friendly, and with the walks along the creek, with the pedestrian paths, it's got mostly sidewalks all the way through to from I-80 to Pinole, or to San Pablo, as well as all the way down Pinole Valley Road out toward the high school. Most of it has sidewalks where pedestrians can walk. We need to work on either some type of widening or stuff to get some bike lanes through there to have more bike access. So that'll be something that we'll need to do. And of course, pedestrian and bicycle access to Old Town should be added north and south of Interstate 80 along Pinole Valley Road, which with the links to Pinole Valley Trail. We need to make sure we can do that. And of course, Pinole Valley Road will serve as a gateway into Pinole with widened sidewalks and landscape plazas that can accommodate various outdoor activities. We'd have to work with the creek, and that's something that, as we get more into this plan, in the plan, we'll take a look at the landscaping requirements and some of the things that are part of the specific plan that we need to implement. So go ahead to the next slide. Of course, the vision for Appian Way, basically that's Appian Way is our thriving retail and service hub to the community, with some new open space and gathering places, with Pinole Square, similar to their redevelopment. They're adding more pedestrian, more people-friendly spaces, and creating more of that, what I call that, what's the word? A destination. These shopping places become destinations where they can go, they can sit at benches. Some of our shopping centers at Fitzgerald have some of those. We have some tables and chairs. Pinole Square will be one of those, and that's kind of right off of Appian Way on Terra Hills. So that providing that, they would, of course, the commercial parking lots provide convenience and attractive locations. We need to make our parking lots. That's something that we can, in terms of designing our parking lots, to make sure that they are pedestrian friendly, where we can get people from point A to point B throughout the parking lot. So that's something that we're going to have to do as those properties redevelop and those properties come in for improvements, and making sure they've got access for pedestrian and bicycles. Of course, Appian Way will serve as our regional gateway into Pinole at the I-80 interchange and at the city limit boundary with El Sobrante. So that's Appian Way. That's a major thoroughfare through there. These areas, of course, the area would always benefit from improved landscaping and streetscaping, including street trees, landscape median, street furniture, the whole 9 yards. So, and then the innovative directional signage, and that's something that we would develop through the whole city. Some type of a newer wayfinding system. We do have some wayfinding that we have that gets us to the downtown in certain way, but I think there might be some other applications of wayfinding that can get us all around town through maybe some a plan or of that nature to work on our wayfinding. Go to the next slide, please. So how do we do that? Well, we do that through all these the visions of the roads. We start using what we call our urban design principles, and these principles all came out of the specific plan. Some of them are more actually, and we can get into the details on some of these, but I just kind of wanted to provide an overview tonight of just some of the things that we talk about with the specific plan. Our urban design principles in terms of land use and economic development, that we support development of local oriented services. We encourage a mix of uses that complement one another, reduce the potential for conflict between residential and non-residential land uses, whether it's through landscaping, through trails, through bike paths, through those types of things, so that so we can get pedestrians and bicyclists on maybe separate paths. And there are new I don't want to say traffic calming devices, but there are new standards out there, like for, you probably might have heard of like a class 4 bike lane, where a lot of cities are starting to take a look at providing, dedicated street width to bicycles and pedestrians as part of their street standards. And of course, development standards and guidelines to support the vision of the specific plan. attract investment. I see my E got misplaced there. So, and basically encourage and provide incentives for target uses such as movie theaters, sit-down restaurants, and civic theaters. So, go to the next slide, please. And some of those urban design principles we use in circulation, which would enhance pedestrian circulation and improve safety at appropriate pedestrian crossings, i.e. lighted, those could include, lighted crosswalks where you can push the button and it lights up and you can cross the street in a safe manner. It could just mean that we could put a crosswalk where there's one should be, that hasn't been one, to help slow down cars at different intersections. Enhance auto circulation and reduce congestion at appropriate locations and crossing. That's always the tough one because there's traffic everywhere, but that's something we can work on. And improve our public transportation connections to BART and West Cat J line. We also have another 3 lines that come. I think the K comes through here, and the L as well. And maximize safety through shelters and lighting and signage and visibility. And we can work with West Cat to maybe design our own shelter so that you're in Pinole when you get off, and it's a certain type of shelter, with maps and all sorts of things. So that's something that we can work with West Cat on. And enhance connections between our neighborhoods and the bay and all of our other recreational activities. Because right now, our bays, there's, to get to the bay, you've got to either live on Hazel out there, or you got to go out to the park. And so we've got to be able to work on the people who are on the other side of I-80 to get there safely, and to, maybe through some design using some design principles to get them there safely and make it more usable for them. Go to the next slide, please. So again, some more urban parking principles in terms of parking. Establish on-site parking requirements for non-residential uses. Discourage off-site parking that may impact nearby residential areas. So that means structures. We've talked about these. We've talked about a lot of these with our downtown. But to maximum extent feasible, provide parking that is available, convenient, and unobtrusive. We can build some lots or build some structures that kind of work your way into the area. Ensure adequate pedestrian and vehicle connections between parking lots and commercial areas to encourage shared parking. So if there are areas like what we've done behind Pear Street Bistro in that area where the city's got easements on all those parking lots, there might be some areas through town that we might be able to maximize some old alleys to get in on the backside of the property, so that people can come off of the main road and get onto and park on the parking lot. The buildings up in the front, the parking lots in the back. So those are other things, and consider shared parking. A lot of cities are kind of doing away with their parking requirements because of these types of things, especially in the downtown area, because it just takes up a lot. It takes up a lot of cement. But I think if you do it, if each business is sharing, or every 2 or 3 businesses are sharing spots, I think that's much more better use of the land, and we can do that within our plan. So if you go to the next slide, please. Urban, so a focal point, aesthetics, landscaping, and of course that's where a lot of differentiation can be had, meaning that in certain corridors, even in San Pablo, even though San Pablo is one corridor, there are probably ways that we can address San Pablo to break it up into 3 or 4 different corridors based on landscaping, based on colors, based on decor, based on green spaces. So you can we could break up some of our corridors so that you're going into the more business-like. You're coming into Old Town. You're coming into Plaza B, or I'm just throwing a name out there, but you're coming into another neighborhood area, so that you can, by using landscaping and aesthetics and signage, you can create that space, and work on color. You can get as intense as using this section can only use these colors, and this section can only use these colors, and this section can use these colors. So there's a lot of different ways besides street lighting. Some in the Old Town, you have all the Old Town style street lighting. As you go out to San Pablo, you use a different style of lighting, not necessarily just the one with this poles, but different style of lighting, street lights that could change, so that when you're driving through, it's like, wow, I'm in a new area. Even though you're driving on the same road and you're going to almost the same places, it just gives you a differentiation as you come through each of those corridors. So, and then of course, establish the business reinvestment. And and to increase the density and optimize development for potential of the corridors. And that's been a theme throughout in terms of housing, in terms of, commercial, where, you might be building bigger buildings, but there are mixed uses in those buildings. It's not just all business. It's just all residential. The first 2 floors might be residential. The second 2 might actually be commercial, or vice versa. So all depends on what's happening and what we want to do. So, and that basically, and we encourage business to actually reinvest, their density, improve their landscaping, update their signage programs. And those are things that we can do. I know a lot of these take money, but these are things that we can work with either through permit costs or through, if you're, in business incentives or those types of things. If you're improving your business per a certain amount, we can look at programs to do that. So go to the next slide, please. Okay, so basically these are our existing conditions. I mean, I kind of went over them. These were kind of like and this is, I think we're almost done here. We talk about the area's history and its historic resources. Our plan talks about our topography and environmental considerations. It talks about our existing land use and zoning. And of course, the existing circulation, transit, pedestrian system, bus service, passenger rail. So it talks all about, our plan talks all about those as part of our existing conditions. If you go to the next slide. Also talks about our fiscal conditions, whether it's city government. I know I have redevelopment in there twice. We know that redevelopment is now gone. However, when I think of redevelopment, now that old redevelopment isn't there, there has to be a new definition of redevelopment, meaning that are there ways that we can do some incentivizing to help people redevelop their properties? Are there, like I said, some of the cities I've worked in, we had incentives where, if you were improving your business by more than 50%, then we would waive, half of your building permit fee, or, because these are existing businesses that are providing services, or even though, waiving water and sewer hookup fees, because either they have them or they're using existing. There's no reason why we have to claim them again. So all types of revitalization projects, center programs, and maybe redevelopment now is more into incentivizing. It's more incentivizing programs instead of redevelopment. But those are just some of our existing, and that's some of the changes that we need to probably take a look at our plan, because it does talk a lot about redevelopment. And I think we just need to redefine that term. Redevelopment, reuse, all that type of language needs to probably be updated. Let's go to the next slide, please. And of course, opportunities. It goes into. I didn't list opportunities and constraints in the plan. That's something I think that's a whole separate meeting's worth of discussion in terms of opportunities, constraints, because I think that's. But it does is that's all part of the existing corridors conditions chapter of the 3 corridor specific plan. And of course, San Pablo, Pinole Valley Road, and Appian Way, they all have those opportunities and constraints. So, but that's something we can go on to a different meeting. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, there we go. Questions and answers. So I know I've gone through a lot of information. I went through it. Hopefully I've gone through it fairly quickly. I know there's probably tons of questions out there, but I'll be happy to answer questions and I'll be able to answer those. I'm pulling up the plan right now, so I will have the plan with me. So with that, that ends my presentation.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody have any questions? Start off. And I'll start with you, Anne.
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation. And I really do encourage the public to look at the 3 corridor specific plan. There's a lot of information in there, like Mr. Hannum was sharing with us. And it's, aimed at some very important parts of our city. So one of the questions I had was, if you could, Mr. Hannum, please speak to how the new state development laws impact do they impact how the specific plan can be implemented?
In terms of like the housing laws and those types of things?
Yeah.
Yes and no, in a way. Yes, it does impact because there's concessions that, based on the new law, based on the density, there are density requirements that if they meet that we have to offer in terms of waivers and concessions and those types of things. So it does impact us because we do have standards, and I'm just going to use one in general, like our parking standard. Most of our commercial development or residential development requires 2 spaces per unit or a space per unit. But if we have, depending on the density of a project that's coming in, they can kind of bypass that with a concession or a waiver because they're 100% affordable. They're in the specific plan. They meet the density requirements, the state, the density bonus law requirements. So in that part, it does kind of affect the specific plan. However, on the reverse of that, it impacts it in a sense that those are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of lessening the impact of parking, or less of an impact on vehicles in our downtown area, in our commercial areas, and more of more use of either whether it's transit or other type of transportation measures that would allow for that. So it's kind of like a hem and haw, and it's a project by project basis that how it could affect. But yeah, it does. The new housing laws do affect what we do in terms of the implementation of the plan. But it also does, the plan also has policies, and we'll get into those later on down the road. But there are policies in there that say, reduce on-site parking, reduce the number of parking stalls, include more bicycle. It's so there's pros and cons to it, and it does affect how we implement. So we have to make sure we evaluate each project as they come in and where that affects us.
Okay, great. Thank you. So kind of along that line, at this point in the current housing environment, can we mandate developers in conditions of approval to, for instance, contribute to enhancing bike ped opportunities and things? I'm thinking in particular of the 1500 Fitzgerald, the new, the old Kmart, building, and how that if we can put requirements that Fitzgerald has, or that they contribute financially to the improvement of bike ped opportunities along Fitzgerald. And the other possibility would be the on Appian Way, the Doctors Hospital development, and how, can we mandate that developers contribute to the enhancement of bike ped opportunities?
I think I'm going to turn to Alex on this one.
Yeah, so I would say there's two. Looks like I maybe. Oh, there we go. There are two things. I guess two separate responses. One, the city can mandate improvements that are directly tied to the project. So, an example of this would be, in a different context, sort of like sidewalk improvements. We could require you to do fix the sidewalk directly in front of your property. We can't mandate that you do a sidewalk improvement plan for the whole city. The way the city accomplishes those more citywide projects is by imposing impact fees. And so they contribute an impact fee, like the city, that based on the expected impact from a project, and we have a study that, helps us determine what that is. They will pay an impact fee, and then those impact fees are used to do citywide projects.
Okay. All right. So,
and just sorry, one other last thing. If the project is subject to CEQA and has, through the CEQA process, there's determined to be environmental impacts, those impacts need to be mitigated. And so depending on what they are, if there are traffic impacts, those might get mitigated in certain ways that might include bicycle improvements, might not, depending on what exactly the impacts are identified as and what's needed to mitigate them.
Okay, fair enough. So, but most of the projects that are coming before us are not subject to CEQA, correct?
Most of them are. Most of them will probably be exempt from CEQA when we put it in final analysis.
All right, so it'll be a game we play to try and make sure that we can get impact fees or whatever it is for these large developments. Okay, fair enough. Other things specifically, I'm thinking. For instance, I know that the Pinole Valley Road, in the vision, it says that there should be gateways into the old town. And I remember watching the city council meeting where Peter Murray was so angry about the entry from I-80 westbound onto Pinole Valley Road, right at the dialysis building. That was supposed to be an entrance, supposed to be a gateway into Old Town, and instead it's a chain link fence surrounding, electrical boxes. What can we as the Planning Commission ever do to make sure and follow up on these kinds of things being implemented?
Yeah, I mean, some of those things, they require a lot of studies. I mean, not to in terms of, because most gateways, I mean, they have overheads where you're kind of coming in, you see entrance into, or you have nice monument signage that you would need easements for. So there's a lot of different ways, and a lot of the gateway signature stuff. A lot of cities do. They do branding plans and gateway plans so that when, for example, if the city has grants or if the city has development dollars where we can impact we can include some of this stuff in a park and recreation fee or something of that nature, where these projects come in, then we can pay for some of those and what they're going to look like. So, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to brand and say, okay, we're the, car capital of the world. But at least it gives an idea of a wayfinding. Usually wayfinding plan that can outline what that signage looks like, what's it supposed to look like, where are we going to put it? And we talked about gateways, but there's not a lot of discussion, and we'll get into those as we get into the public realms and the private realms of design standards of what those signs are supposed to look like. So that's something that we would need to do and make sure that when we do that we get a lot of community input on that, to make sure that when people are driving in, because people's property will be affected, whether it's especially our property in terms of right of way, because that's normally where most of these public improvements go. So we just need to make sure that when we put that plan together, that we see where it is. So I would recommend that we take a look at doing some type of gateway plan or a wayfinding plan, which would outline different signage types for our gateways and our entries and all that type of stuff. And that's and there are grants out there for that. In fact, in one of the cities I worked in, we got a wayfinding grant, as well as wayfinding and branding, but we don't need the branding part of it. I don't think this thing doesn't need to be branded, but definitely a wayfinding plan would definitely outline all that. And then it also set up how much it's going to cost, and so it gives you a chance to either find a way how to fund it, or work with our private partners, and either through the chamber or through lines or through other sources of funding that you can get or help get and help better the city. Because I know a lot of those service groups and a lot of those like to do those type of projects for the city. So it's just a matter of working those relationships and getting that put together.
Great. That's good in the big picture and such. My question was actually a little bit more specific just to that gateway in particular. And unfortunately, I didn't do my homework and find out what was the expectation that the developers of the dialysis building, were expected to follow through on. And so you're absolutely right. It is part of a bigger, like the in the old town, the street signs and such like that. Yeah. However, I'm wondering what the bigger or the more specific picture is to this development. Just thinking, in reading about the specific plan. Right. Thinking about gateways and such. So maybe we can look at that in a future meeting.
Actually, we take a look at Gateway, because Gateway, all of that was mainly done in the Gateway Shopping Center, and a lot of that landscaping, a lot of the median and all that was all part of it, all part of the Gateway. In terms of that, I don't remember any. I mean, I'd have to go back through it again, but we'd have to take a look and see what the signage portion of the Gateway portion. And of course, Caltrans does have a little bit to say about that as you're coming down the off ramp, because they do have right of way where we can't, where that fence is the differentiation from their right of way and what we have. And so sometimes that fence is on their right of way and there's not there. We can't do anything about that. That's just really Caltrans. But we can maybe, as you make the turn, take a look at different areas that we might be able to, City of Pinole or welcome to the City of Pinole or welcome to the historic areas we go through and, that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm saying. We could look at some signage and see what was available as part of that subdivision, out of that shopping center, and see what.
That would be great. When we get into the public realms section of here, if we could specifically address that. Sure. That development right there and see, give us a little bit of time to look that up. But I appreciate that. I think that is, those were all the questions that I had. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Adam, do you have any questions?
Well, first, thanks to Mr. Hanna for putting together this presentation. It was good to bring this back to the forefront of things again. And thank you, Ann, for asking the question about kind of our limitations of what we can and can't do. I had the exact same questions. Thank you, Alex, for kind of clarifying that. Your answer was spot on. I had a couple quick questions. One was, in the past, have there been any definitions or ideas or expectations that were in the specific plan that were, maybe not clear or presented a lot of, back and forth discussion, just things to keep in mind in the future of things to look out for?
You kind of got me there because my history of the plan is all of about a couple of years. So I wasn't here and it's a 10-year-old plan. And so to go back and look and see what they were thinking back to, you got to remember, this is what they were thinking 10 years ago, which, as implementation goes, it's really based on how development, unless you're really proactive in other aspects of it, really pushing those design realms, design guidelines and the public realm standards and those types of things. So I think with these projects that are coming in now, I think now is a really good time to really take a look at what we really want, and kind of, not to say that the past isn't there, because I think we have what they were looking at as part of the 10 years ago, but I think now it's really a good time to really take a look at what we want for the future. Because I think that when you look at some of the, not to say that what they have is bad, because they've got some great standards and some great design guidelines, but I think there might be some things that we might be able to improve on. And what we know now, what they didn't know 10 years ago, in terms of reuse, in terms of, GHG, in terms of other standards, all electric buildings. Just the whole sustainability issues that are coming through and the new technologies that are coming through. I think is something that that I think we would need to take a look at as we're moving forward. Because coming from 2010, I mean, sustainability really was not even really. I mean, it really wasn't thought of that much. I mean, it kind of was getting on the radar in 2010, 2011, but not like it is right now. And I think going forward, I think we'll need a lot more of those types of policies and design standards to put into our plans. So, but so to keep when we get to that section, that'd be really start looking at what we really want to see in our as part of our landscape areas and all that kind of stuff. So,
okay. So from the other commissioner standpoint, no one recalls specific topics or things within the specific plan that always seem to cause controversy or unclear or any of that stuff from past projects for the past couple of years? No one, did anyone ever remember anything?
Well, a lot of the major projects that have occurred where there was controversy was just before the specific plans were implemented. Like, for example, the Pinole Shopping Center. That was a very political kind of driven project. And there were lots of things that had a lot of moving parts to it. And how it ended up the way it was kind of at the last minute in terms of what turned out. One of the biggest things, as an example of that one that was the most controversial, was at the time, this I guess was the city council, because I don't remember doing it on a planning commission, allowed a variance for about 100 less parking spaces than what was required. And so anyone who goes on a regular basis knows you got to aim at the right times or go at off times to get a parking space, because it's almost always crowded. And that's because there are 100 spaces short from what was allowed. And that was kind of a medium-sized deal, generated a kind of a rejection of the project, and then it was appealed. And the appeal process was far different than it is now. I think it was appealed by the city council, from what I remember. I mean, this is before I was on it. So, but that's an example of something. I mean, it was kind of a double-edged sword, because that shopping center was in dire need of renovation. It needed to be renovated before it just collapsed altogether. And so anything that was going to happen to it would be good. And I think that's why the dice was rolled to reduce the amount of parking. And we're, every day we see what happens as a result of that. People have adjusted over time to that, but there's 100 spaces less. When I get to my part, I can give you some background on how some of the things in the specific area plans kind of came to be, but I wanted to hear from everybody else first.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks. And the last question I have is for David again. Are you going to be doing other future presentations on other specific topics as we dive deeper? Is over the next couple? Oh
yeah.
Meetings?
This is just kind of the opening shot across the bow for the first couple of things. We'll get more in detail to each of the corridors, and so tonight was just kind of an intro, kind of some existing stuff. I will go more into the opportunities and constraints, because those were some of the issues that the areas had in each of the. I think that's important to see how, now we're 11 years later, going on 12 years later, to see if those things came to fruition. And then so this is just the opening night, so to speak, of what we're doing. So.
Well, great. Thank you in advance for putting this together, because it is important. So thanks. And Tim, that's all my questions.
Okay. Let's see, Frankie, you have any questions?
Definitely, thank you. Again, Dave, thank you for being thoughtful and putting this together for us. I really appreciate the opportunity to learn more about this. Yes, my questions, because I live in Old Town and I do a lot of walking around here, Dave. When I think about the project that we've been talking about on, is it Roble and San Pablo Avenue? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I mean, that one just got that one's coming. We're working on that one. That'll be coming before you here shortly.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about it, and it would be senior housing. On that particular block, it's a little dangerous. So if I were a senior person, I would want like pedestrian markings or a stoplight or something to help get them across that street, right? Is there a way that we can, and maybe this has to do with what Alex was recommending, that we put some money together, guidelines to make sure that if we go forward with a project like that, we also make sure to install the appropriate safety mechanism of a stoplight on San Pablo and Roble, or whatever block that is that the project's going in on.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's definitely, I mean, and of course, we're still putting the conditions of approval together right now. So I know Michael and I will be working on that to kind of take a look at what we, some of those things as well. So, yeah, so that's, I mean, and we'll be looking at that both with APN Way and Pinole Vista and 2801 Pinole Valley Road. So all those 4 projects. So, yeah, so as we put the conditions of approval, we'll be looking at those issues as well. Okay.
And then, the other part, and I think you've touched a little bit on this, is trying to get our city to a point where, 10% of our new buildings where new construction has some green component, right? And that could be anything like solar panels on them or EV charging stations as we move toward the future. Because these plans, as we know, were written 10 years ago. We weren't talking about electric cars, and now we are, right? So if we put the correct guidelines in place saying this is a requirement by our city because we know this is the future, that will help us kind of start moving in that direction, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, those all of those issues, and we're starting to address them now because some of those issues are pertinent now, and so we're trying to get ahead of that in some of the things, and we're working with each of these developers right now to, especially with electric vehicles, and we know that's more of a, that's up and coming, and it's right, and it's up and coming, and it's here right now in terms of the cars are here now. It's a matter of getting the infrastructure and making sure all that works. So yeah, we're continually. So some of that we're working on right now. I mean, we're not waiting for the future or any plans. We're moving on. But there's some other issues. I mean, there's a lot of sustainability stuff going on. I mean, the county's working on a lot of sustainability stuff right now. They just, I think they just had a presentation here recently and sent us some information. So, yeah, we'll be looking at, that's why these plans, that's why they need to be updated every so often because, new technologies, new ideas, new formulas need to get out there. And so, yeah, we're continuing to work on that. And energy stuff, I think, is going to be with each code cycle. I think with each building code cycle will probably be more. They got to have electric this, or you got to have gas that, or it'll be more descriptive in what's needed or what they need. So
definitely, because if we're putting in housing, affordable housing, or whatever it's going to be, right? Those folks aren't. It isn't like you go to your own house and plug in your garage, right? So that's where some of those components would need to be baked into the guidelines initially for us. Yeah. And then lastly, Dave. Have we, I guess maybe something we could consider as well would be like the newer living walls. So on the side of the buildings where half of the building is covered in some type of tree or plant or shrubage. We started any work in that arena?
We haven't yet, but we do have landscape requirements. So depending on the overall landscaping of the project, we can always assist, if there are areas where the landscaping maybe you need more trees on this side of it. So on your percentage of landscaping, let's try and landscape more of this area over in this part, either offset some of that. So we still have that. We still have room to maneuver in some of those different regulations that we currently have in terms of our landscape ordinance and all that. So it's just a matter of working with the developer, working with the project proponent to get them to, hey, this side's really sunny side, or this is night, so maybe these two sides you don't need as much landscaping on these two sides as you do this, just for for energy needs or that kind of stuff. So we've got a little maneuvering room still within those requirements.
Thank you, Dave. That finalizes my questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Mr. Curran.
Me on mute here. I just have a couple of quick things. Ann had asked a question about the impact of the state on the specific plan. And one thing I kind of want to highlight is the requirement by the state to designate an area where an emergency shelter or temporary home can be constructed with by right, by entitlement. And I kind of want to point out that there's the OIMU sub area, which is about where Pinole Shores meets San Pablo, where Sugar City is, and kind of splits there. That area is designated as a place where if somebody wanted to put in an emergency shelter, they could do it by entitlement. That's something that a lot of people don't know, and that's kind of a state requirement. I believe that the question was also asked about whether these specific plans met the vision that we had in 2010. And I think one of the things that we really looked upon was for housing opportunities. And we saw a lot of commercial areas that may not survive. The Doctor's Hospital, for one, the Pinole Square, even though they're thinking of, they're upgrading without housing, but we kind of looked at those as areas to where housing could manifest itself, or it could, where even though we were kind of thinking of this as a place where we could squeeze in housing. And although with Pinole Square, it's not happening, we're seeing it on the other side of the freeway with the Kmart. So I think that's one thing that we kind of envisioned in 2010 that is kind of coming to fruition. Otherwise, I think that there really hasn't been a whole bunch of development. We're seeing a lot now in the last couple of years, but there really hasn't been that much being constructed. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks, David. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I do have, a few comments and maybe suggestions or, questions. So first of all, I think, thank you very much again, Mr. Hannan, for presenting this and all the commissioners asking the questions or the comment.
Simon, can you raise your volume? I can hardly hear you.
Let me just try that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, so.
Great. Thank you, Dave, for mentioning that. So, a couple of questions and comments. First of all, again, thank you very much for Mr. Hannan to present the ideas here and for us to continue the discussions and, hopefully, in the future we can, all contribute to help, those plans. So I think part of my questions here is related to how much we can do as a planning commissioner in terms of, looking into or help develop or modify the specific plan. I heard from, some members talking about specific locations, or overall, how we can address the issues. Sometimes we have to deal with situations like for example, in Pinole, that little gateway situations is we have not only to face, the developer, the design and looking at our specific plan, but we also have to deal with like Caltrain, that Mr. Hammond you mentioned, or the creek. Sometimes we have to deal with, the Army Corps of Engineer because I can't plant a tree extra here or put a sign there, and so how much can we enforce? That is my first question. The second thing that I'm thinking out loud, pretty along with Commissioner Curran also too, is 10 years ago when we actually generated the plan, and it is 10 years from now, we never thought that, electric cars going to be, happening. I hope that one day we are going to see the Back to the Future flying cars too, right? It's not happening yet. Medical center no longer there. Kmart becomes potentially, a residential, housing. And so what is our plan here at the commission and or the city? Perhaps are we thinking about continuations of discussions and modify it? I hate to see the modifications being piecemeal as we are hitting something and then we just modify a little bit here and there, and that becomes kind of inconsistent with each other's. And so are there any particular plan from the planning from the city and or maybe the city council that would like to work together with the commissioners here to have multiple forums or discussions, including the general public, to talk about the specific plan modifications if it's needed. And number three, and it's my final comment, it's really related to that particular development in the Old Kmart area, that it's technically not part, even though it's kind of yellow out by you at the little corner right there, it's really not part of what we call, so-called the specific plan of Appian Way. As we are going more towards development of the Fitzgerald, and as you can see that we have a lot of commercials development, and all of a sudden now we're talking about putting mixed use and or residential there. Are there any particular, thing from the city side point of view that we might want to develop our fourth, corridor specific plans, specifically for Fitzgerald? Maybe that's something that, all of us can think about, and maybe the city council can think about. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So in terms of enforcement, I mean, if we come up with, if we were to develop a plan, and developers come in and they're within that area, we can mandate that they, hey, you got to put in this part of as part of your plan, and that part of it. So there are things that we can do. In terms of, I agree with you that, it's not good to piecemeal plans. Plans tend to get inconsistent as you keep updating separate sections. These plans do cost a lot of money, and so it is looking at doing these things. However, like for example, like our housing element's due next year, so there could be some policies and procedures that are in our housing element that might dictate other additional housing units within our commercial, residential, mixed use areas, right, or different properties that way. So it kind of forces our hand in that. Even though we have design guidelines for our specific plan, and that we could require more development in those residential development in those non-residential, quote, traditional non-residential areas. Adding Fitzgerald, that's an interesting idea. I do want to say that Pinole Vista, it is the last property on the Appian Way specific plan. So it is in the specific plan, but it is the last. Looking at the map right now, it is the last property that's in that area. So, but yeah. So I think that could be a good suggestion. Is Fitzgerald is really a corridor, and that could be, our last corridor, and it could be an entryway corridor because it comes right in off of 80 and that type of stuff. So there are things to take a look at. So that's really a good idea, actually. I mean, Appian Way kind of covers some of Fitzgerald. In fact, like I said, Kmart is the last. That Pinole Vista Shopping Center is the last center that's in the Appian Way. In the Appian Way plan. So that could be, that could be its own corridor in a sense, and create its own area. So, I mean, we can do some of that. In terms of, I mean, the city council would have to ultimately, if the commission were to, talk to the council, or there is the subcommittee, I know it's an ordinance subcommittee that the council has. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Alex, I mean, I'll ask you that question. I mean, could we bring something like this to that committee to just discuss, or is that outside the purview of that committee?
That committee is for municipal code updates referred to by the city council. I mean, if the commissioner wants to bring this to the this idea to the council's attention, it can always, email council members, or, ask the city manager to put something on the agenda so you can do that, or just come to the council to make public comment, and then the council can decide, let's put this on the future agenda item for a further discussion.
Okay. So there are ways that we can take a look at it, or, that kind of stuff. So, I don't think they don't have planning commission and city council work. At least they haven't in the past. They had city council planning commission workshops where they get together and.
They have. They're usually
used to.
Yeah, about specific projects. More so, I think.
Well, there was a time we used to meet once a year. We'd have a joint meeting and talk about. It was always very, very general. Every now and then there'd be something that would be specific, but it was mostly very general things. That's just a matter of the focus of how we would do that, and we could drive that ourselves in terms of getting this council's attention.
Yeah, and through the chair, I mean, that might not be a bad idea to get a general consensus of what, the city leaders and, the commission, leaders might want to think about, like we can go into detail in a separate meeting, but that kind of a general discussions, being able to see it by the general public, all together as the leadership of the city might be super helpful, maybe actually draw a lot of, people to attend to that situations too, or attend to those meetings.
Yeah.
Quick question. Could the American Rescue Plan funds be used for anything like this? The $4+ million that we're going to be getting?
So the plan funds have, there's eligible expenses that they can be used for. We just have to look at, what exactly is being proposed. Those funds are generally intended to be used on things directly related to the impacts of COVID-19.
Okay.
But sometimes there are, there's a little wiggle room to do stuff. So, for example, in addition to COVID-19, it expressly allows certain infrastructure improvements, water, sewer, broadband. None of that is this, but there's some other things that it allows that we may be able to work. So like small business loans for people that have been impacted by COVID-19, something we talked about earlier, I think, with some, businesses in Old Town who maybe, have out of step signs or things like that. So perhaps we might be able to wiggle in, you can get small business assistance for these certain things or something like that. So just sort of, we'd have to look at what exactly the proposal is.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, if, being creative and thinking about how we use that money and thinking about ways that we can be improving the community and how infrastructure might fit in exactly what you were suggesting in a sense. So great, thanks.
Okay. I wanted to, I thought, boy, everyone really, I'm constantly amazed at the level of presentation in this commission in terms of the things that are said, the questions that are raised, the ideas that come up, Who would have thought to even think of making Fitzgerald its own specific area? I mean, that was 10 years ago. That was so far off the radar. All that was 88% of the city's budget was coming from. That's all they even thought of. It was the show me the money part of the city. So it was, just let it do whatever it wants because we don't want to stop the flow of money. So, these type of things where you go, and it was apparently it was very, Debbie can back me up on this, it was very rare, almost borderline foolish to try to do a specific plan, general plan, and zoning ordinance all at the same time. It took a year to do all that. And everyone seemed to think that we were taking on a whole lot of stuff for the city, but a lot of those things were pretty old. And typically this kind of maneuver, when you do these type of updates, it usually happens for a 20-year period. So we're right in the middle of the lifespan of the last general plan, specific area plan, zoning ordinance upgrade or evolution, I guess you'd say. So, and a lot of things are to me now, just looking back on what we were thinking versus now, it seems things have accelerated far faster than we were even thinking was going to happen. Electric cars was, like the Jetsons. We were just hoping that the bus would show up on time every now and then, and there was, and then the biggest thing at that point that we always had redevelopment to fall back on, that redevelopment was the city's cash cow when it came to projects and planning and taking care of blight and all those kind of things. So it didn't last only but a couple of years after that, but it was always going to go away anyway. It just went away about 3 years sooner than it was supposed to. So, and at that time, I have to say we were kind of ignoring the inevitable. So it's just as well that it happened sooner. But the primary things that were going on at the time when we were looking at generating the specific plans was trying to maximize the potentials for each of the areas. The areas, of course, Appian Way, Pinole Valley Road, and San Pablo Avenue. Each one had its own things going on with it. One of the things that was really pushing the development and the plans was people moving through the areas. So streets and getting from here to there, those types of things was really foremost. One of the things that was really foremost in generating the specific area of plans. The other thing that was going on at that time, this was the beginning of the rise of the most current version of multi-use developments. Up at that point, transit-oriented developments were pretty popular, but you had to have a BART station more than anything else to make that really work. And we had, so there was always the specific plans, there's always kind of a mixed use direction towards it. In Pinole Valley Road, it was residential with some retail. Old Town and Pinole and San Pablo Avenue, at least part of Old Town, was residential and office or residential and a little bit of retail. And then San Pablo Avenue at that time was more in commercial, office and industrial, with a potential of places that we maybe could put some high density residential at the time. We weren't anywhere near the housing crisis that we are now. So that was kind of, well, if anyone want to do it, we should make it so we can have a big apartment building here. So that was about the extent of how that was being treated. It was all still relatively general, other than those types of developments, and it got into things like setbacks and building. If you built a 3-story building in Old Town, the second floor would have to be set back from the street more, so it wouldn't overpower the street and generate shadow problems and things like that. And so there was things that was kind of the level of detail that was going on with that. Again, a lot of stuff was still, well, with redevelopment, we could do this because that was still hot and heavy back then. What happened right after we finished that is the downturn occurred. And so normally the time period where you flesh out problems with the various plans you put in place never happened for at least, 7 or 8 years, 6 or 7 years. We're actually only seeing it really in a full effect now, in terms of the amount of development we're having now and what's going on. Some of the things we kind of wondered if it was going to work, we're going to find out now that no, it didn't work, or more likely, no, things have changed because now we're doing these things. Now we have a big housing crisis. Now we have more interest in public transportation. That was the beginning of the era where parking started going away. All of a sudden, people were not requiring as much parking, in our plan and the zoning ordinance reduced the levels of parkings in commercial areas. And that was, kind of the fad at the time. And, but it's still going on, there's still a push for public transportation and things like that. But it's seeing now how things are versus what we thought they would be. Things are moving much faster than we thought they would. In terms of the way development's changed, and even Pinole is, the next few years, and the things we're talking about this year are going to have a really long-lasting effect for decades in terms of the amount of people that are going into some of these new developments. The 606 units of people. That's a lot of people. And that's why I've been saying, really you need to put a map out and put all of our developments on a map to see what, not just the individual impact, but the impact of all these developments combined. What is that going to do to Pinole? And what it's going to do specifically to these areas that we had developed as specific areas to keep an eye on to generate a more, a nicer place to live and to work in. So, it's moving all pretty fast. So it wouldn't hurt to kind of take a step back and look at what we have now versus what's going on. And like what Simon's saying, maybe we may need another area plan. You know, at the very end of developing those 3 specific area plans, the planner at the time found the Old Town plan. It had just disappeared into, you know, a file somewhere, and no one knew about it. And he brought it up right towards the end of that period. But by the time he had found that, and it wasn't clear whether it had been totally codified or not, you know, we were kind of done with the specific area plans, and we were trying to get into the zoning norms because we were running out of time. So it's good that now in the last couple of years, you all have been looking at this and trying to figure a way to make that marry with the plans that we have now. And I think that's going to be very good in the long run. I was thinking about what, I guess, what Ann was talking about in terms of putting in rules or some kind of way to generate things that we want to have. You know, in an example of like usually like maybe more defined bicycle paths, and trying to get a developer to go for that. So our problem right now is, you know, we could easily make a big laundry list of things like that, but at the same time, developers are getting pretty much carte blanche in what they can do through the state because of all the incentives and concessions that are being developed. And developers won't do anything unless it's to their advantage. So the question is going to be, if we want to have those kind of things, how do we make it towards the developer's advantage? You know, traditionally, before the concession era started, we would have things like density bonuses and parking bonuses, where if they did something, we'll reduce something else. If you generate more open space over on one part of your property, maybe we'll reduce the parking as a result. You know, I think that might be the language that we have to use in terms of, if we want more thought to things like bicycle paths, as an example, we want more thought to increase landscaping in areas that need it, we're going to have to give them something. We may have to have concessions that go beyond the state's concessions, depending on the project. So that might be one way to figure out, you know, what can we get that we can get someone to do, but we're going to have to give them something in return. Otherwise, they're not even going to begin to be interested in it. You know, when I was on the city council about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we had voted in some money for a Shero program, a small one. It was only going to be in Pinole Valley Road. And there was a little bit of money, but it was never implemented. I don't know why, because there was the money for it. It was only going to be along Pinole Valley Road, kind of like from Ellerhorst up to about Sarah Drive. I think that's all the money we had for something like that. But there was something in place.
It was implemented. The Sheros were implemented all the way to San Pablo Avenue. It's just that it was never completed. The signage was never added. So the Sheros are on the road, but the signage is not completed.
Oh, okay, really? Because I've actually never noticed them. Maybe I'm driving by too fast.
Take a look. You're just not looking at the road.
So
better slow down, Tim.
But there was always the thought of, you know, increasing that. You know, things like, you know, what was brought up earlier, you know, having, you know, senior citizens want to come down from some of these developments on San Pablo Avenue. You know, maybe we need to make the sidewalks wider, so they feel they're right up against the street. You know, one of the developers just discovered that we have up to the virus, we had a thriving senior center, and you know, now they want to make sure that the, you know, people that are going to go into their development know that that's there, you know, because it always won't be like how it is now, and that could, you know, they're not that far away from it. So that's just the kind of thinking that we have to kind of, you know, we have to kind of push. I don't want to say out of the box, but you just have to think a little harder in terms of how we would implement some of these things. You know, what would be the best way to make things better? And as an example of that, I would say make the sidewalks wider. I don't know if that means that we're going into the street, which would affect, you know, we have to be careful with San Pablo Avenue because it's a regional highway. You can't shrink it down too much because we tried that already and it didn't work because we weren't allowed to do it. But those are the kind of things that we have to kind of think about. Like the one project we looked at a couple months ago where they wanted to cut their parking in half, but you know, it was going to be obvious that people were going to start parking in the neighborhoods nearby, and people there were concerned. So let's get rid of the red painted out in front. That'll get rid of some of it, but it's some of that we can do in terms of giving some examples on how to alleviate some of these things. So we're in an interesting time because now we're really taking our updates that we did 10 years ago, and we really are taking them out for a spin and seeing what they can really do. Maybe we may find that we have to update some things. I do agree that we can't do it piecemeal. If we looked at something, we'd have to look at at a larger format. But I don't think we have to wait 20 years to the next update to do anything. I think we could do it along the way. So, but I was very impressed tonight on the amount of ideas and the beginnings of solutions, really, of what we could do and what we have. I do think that we need to look at our projects that we have now as a whole. Even if we, I bugged David lots of times. You need to get a big map and start putting big squares in. Here's this one. Here's this one. Here's this one.
I'm doing that as we're doing this process. You'll start seeing corridors, and I'll be pinpointing where the projects are so that you can. It won't be the scaled model with buildings and all that kind of stuff, but you'll at least know where the projects are in the corridor.
That's all we need, because that's not hard to look at a big block that defines a project, and if you have enough of them together in the same place, something's going to happen. We got to make sure that we can make that happen in a positive way, as opposed to, picking it up on the flip side and doing damage control.
That'll be coming in your next few meetings. So,
okay. So, that's all I really had to say, other than thanking everyone again for lots of good ideas and lots of concern. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of these. Yeah. And it sounds like you got all kinds of stuff up your sleeve here, David, that you'll be able to give us. So that's really good.
Yeah. Chairman Willis, before we end, we do have a comment from a member of the public that would like to speak on that item. This is from Rafael Menes.
Okay,
Rafael, you're free to speak.
All right. Greetings, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and members of the public. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my comments on this item. I mostly got some questions about particular elements in the item that maybe you'll be able to answer from a historical perspective. So on page 41 under vision, it was noted that on December 11th, 2008, there was a plan to narrow San Pablo Avenue. And then on page 170, there was a more detailed discussion to narrow San Pablo Avenue from 4 through lanes to 2 through lanes. And it looks like it's still 4 2 lanes. So was there a process that it just turned out it didn't work? Was that just not implemented? What happened with that? And then on page 46, there's some discussion of active use open space parkland on the Hill and Appian Way near Doctors Medical Center. And then again, also on page 89, some further discussion of that. I was wondering whether any action had been taken to sort of open up that open space to more public access, to build up trails there. On page 114, there was some discussion about expanding available shared public parking, possibly having a parking garage in Old Town Pinole in order to relieve individual projects of the obligation to provide parking on site. So I was wondering whether the overall parking studies that have been done just determined that wasn't necessary because there was enough parking, or that the impact of a parking garage would have been sufficiently great to offset the net benefits of having increased parking in the region. Also, with regards to greater public transit accessibility, this is sort of linking out to a broader topic. I know that one of the things that was brought up when there was sort of a mini city council town hall a few years back about public transit links was that one of the things that could be done to improve public transit access in Pinole was to have sort of a park and ride sort of parking area in downtown Pinole in sort of a central area to allow for more public transit access. And finally, sort of hopping back to page 32, chapter 1, it starts off doing great by, sort of highlighting the core community character goals, CC1, CC2, CC3, and how that ties into the plan. But with regards to discussion of sustainability, it's just one paragraph on page 57. It's not clearly broken out like the community character goals are. And I think that's definitely something where the Planning Commission could maybe highlight some of the sustainability goals, like the community character goals were highlighted at the start of the thing. And finally, I'd note that the specific plan has been updated as recently as June of 2020. So it's not as though it can't be updated. It has been updated recently. Thank you.
Okay. David, I can answer some of those questions.
Well, if you want me to go ahead, I can answer some of those too. So
let me take my first shot here. There were several times when I was on the Planning Commission and later on the City Council where we talked about narrowing San Pablo Avenue, specifically right in Old Town. Some of that was just to kind of generate more of a walking presence in terms of the look and the feel, slowing things down a little bit to make sure people saw the businesses that were there and the restaurants and whatnot. And there were at least, I remember, 2 different times that was brought up. One of the things that generates a difficulty is San Pablo Avenue, because it used to be US 40, is still considered a regional area, regional road. And I'll back up in case something happened to the freeway, say there was an earthquake or something. But because it has that regional road designation, it has to have a certain number of lanes, I believe that's how that was. And so any kind of bulbing out of areas like for, some landscaping, some place to sit, things like that, was in conflict with the state's vision or view of how that road should be. We also ran into a significant amount of reaction from the local businesses in immediate downtown because, and this goes back to the idea of going down to less lanes. They were concerned that because the people that bring them their goods when they, the suppliers, when they come to do their deliveries, and you've seen this with people just bringing stuff to you from Amazon, they stop right pretty much in the road and drop things off. And they were concerned that if there were less lanes, they would affect how deliveries were going to come to the businesses. And there was a lot of comment on that. Which I think is why we heard it twice, because it happened once and then it happened again and the same reaction occurred. So that's sort of the San Pablo Avenue thing.
Tim, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
About San Pablo.
Yeah, you probably
it's really San Pablo Avenue is considered a route of regional significance by the County Transportation Authority, and part of the growth. Part of the conditions that we get our return from source money is that if there's any changes to routes of regional significance, it has to be approved by the Transportation Authority. And there was a real concern about throttling the lanes, or would create a big traffic jam. So the reason why we didn't do it is because it would be against Measure J. Mm-hmm. And it's not really a state requirement, but a county requirement.
Yeah, and that was kind of part of that. Was kind of the other part of that. Yeah, that's very true. Thanks for remembering that. In terms of parking, and I remember we did talk a couple times. I think my first time in the Planning Commission, we talked about this too. I think, Dave, you might remember that there was some talk about a parking garage up by the post office.
That was when we had a redevelopment agency.
Yeah, that's a part of it. Yeah. When you build a parking garage, yeah, back when we were flush, when you build a parking garage, you could figure a cost of a parking garage as $60,000 a parking space, because that's what it takes to build the garage that's around that parking space. So it's quite a expensive maneuver, to say the least. And there's a point where if you make a little one may never pencil out for you. You actually may have needed to do a big one in order for it to really come back to you economically. And we don't have a place for something big. There was some talk about eventually the post office is going to leave that building because it really belongs to the city, and the city would have another sort of opportunity project space. And that was one of the things that came up, and this is back 2005, 2006, something like that, was to build a parking structure to do just that. There'd already been at least 2 parking studies done directly in Old Town, and I think the cumulative result of those is the crosswalks being a different color than the pavement. So I think that was all that really ended up out on the street. So there was a significant economic cost to doing that, and I think that's, and during that time when we were, it was the beginnings of the downturn, things that cost big money were just didn't even want to talk about them. So that's quite a thing to have happen. I mean, cities do it. We've seen them in a lot of cities, but they're pretty decent size in a lot of places. And usually sometimes they'll do a parking garage with a retail element to it, so they at least can rent out some space. I worked on a project in Culver City where, in order to support the parking structure the city was building, they built a market hall, where they were going to build a market hall. And the market hall justified the parking structure. So it's really a money thing for something like that. And for Pinole, it's a space thing. And again, that goes back to the era of it where even putting solar panels like we have at the high school now out there was revolutionary, and even that had to be a certain size. Let's see. A lot of things about sustainability, 10 years ago just wasn't there. And that's why when you look at some of the common goals, sustainability wasn't really touched on very much, because it was fairly new relative to what we have now. Now we have California Green Code. And a lot of things that occur that people think about, this would be a good idea, depending on the size of the project, it's required by code now. You have to have certain things going on with a building of a certain size that's more efficient. And you have to prove that it is. On a set of drawings for a house, the first 4 pages is energy and sustainability. And it's all, little tight and things people have to check off while they're building their house that they're doing. So now we have a much, it's done at the building code level now. That's not to say that we couldn't generate our own requirements, but they probably would be, or you'd have to make sure they were in line with what the building code says. But then the question would be, well, if the building code makes us do it, do we have to do anything about it? Because it has to be done anyway. Let's see. I thought there was one other thing. David, was there one other? Do you remember one other thing he was asking about?
I want to say it was the public transit, the park and ride lots, the being able to access transit, or like transportation hubs. So park and ride lots to get you to park and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. See, back in 2010, I don't think they had the big parking area over at Hercules, the transit center there, which someday will be a BART station. And I know we did talk about it when I was on the WestCat board a few times. The comment always was, well, you need a certain amount of area to do it. At that time, they were talking about the possibility of taking over that, that old shopping center in Terra Hills, where the Giant Hamburger is, and all that. There was some talk about that would be an ideal place to have a transit center of something of a decent size that would really benefit a lot of people. But that's as far as it went. It was kind of, that's a great idea, and that was kind of the end of it. But that's not to say that could happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing on the park and ride lot, I mean, we can also work with our businesses on Fitzgerald to, designate certain parts of their lot as park and ride, Monday through Friday, type stuff where, people can come and park, like in the rear, so usually in the outlying areas of the parking lot, and then work with transit to get you there. So, I mean, there are ways we can start looking at those things, but Tim's right. Back in 2010, a lot of that wasn't really thought about, in terms, especially sustainability. I mean, I don't even think AB 32 and SB 375 were just coming into fruition in 2010. No one really knew what what those things were going to look like in terms of, and plans and all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of cities like Pinole and a lot of cities that were updating their general plans back then just put in some general policies of sustainability so that they could meet that general requirement, knowing that it'd be their next update that would really bring in more sustainability. And a lot of cities now are, because of the enhanced, what Tim was talking about, the Title 24, the sustainability, that's where all the LEED certifications come in, bronze, silver, and gold. That's part of the proof with some of these businesses as part of that certification program that comes through, as well as, businesses are talking about going all electric. Most buildings have to be retrofitted to go all electric, but that's something new that's coming. But the sustainability and those types of those issues, those all need to be updated within our plans, I think. And I know the county is working as part of their climate action planning process that they're doing right now. I know we'll probably be piggybacking on some of that when the new community development director comes in. I know pretty sure that's going to be a topic of discussion to make sure that we get up to speed on all of that. And get that work done, because there are some grants out there that you can get to at least get some basic guidelines and then build on those plans. So, regarding San Paulo, I also did some research on that. I talked to WestCat or WICTAC, and the main thing is the vehicle per hour. We have to have so many vehicles per hour to be able to get through there. During the peak times. That's the main crux of the whole, and that's why you have the 4 lanes, because you got to be able to get that traffic through. Can you do it with 2 lanes? There'll be a lot of cross traffic that wouldn't be happy if we had to do that with 2 lanes, or 2 lanes in a left-hand turn. We'd have to synchronize, and we wouldn't be able to do it for very long. So maybe it is only a 3-block, where we climb it down for 3 blocks, but we're going to have to be able to get that amount of traffic through in that 3-block area. So there's a lot of work that would have to be in timings and stuff to work with to do that. But we are going to be when the bridge project goes through, because they will be knocking down San Paulo down to 2 lanes when they're upgrading the bridge. And I know we're working on that project with WICTAC and Caltrans, and we're getting a lot of funding for that project. So we'll be able to see what 2 lanes looks like. And in fact, we are studying that as part of the study process with that program as well. So there's another avenue that could be coming here in the next year or two, just to kind of see what that 2 lanes of traffic, because with some timing devices and making sure the left-hand turn lanes are all in place with some stacking availability to be able to get those, because a lot of traffic is taken up by people making left-hand turns in those lanes because they're not free lefts. They're just, so it's a lot of timing and making sure we can do that. But it's mainly to get enough traffic through those intersections during the peak time. That's what WICTAC is looking at.
Yeah, for us right now, if you really want to think of the future, one thing we could think about, what's going to be the impact of driverless cars? Where are they going to go? How are they going to make their turns? Those kind of things that are not even being thought of, I don't think, on the general scheme of things. Maybe the people that are designing them are thinking about that.
Well, the first thing that you need to do is to make sure that all the pavement are paved, and you have the lines clearly.
That's right. That's
going to increase your public work money for every single city. Otherwise, the sensor will not sense the link.
That's right.
That's a huge investment for every single city that you need to put money on and thoughts on. So.
Oh yeah.
Or figure some way for those things to read anything.
Yeah.
So that's and that's going to come. That's not going to go away. That's just like, when Model Ts came out, they weren't 100%, but people stuck with them. So
and those driverless cars are talking a lot with Google right now and Google Maps and how to position those cars and how to network those with the roads and all that. The only problem is like Tim and Simon were saying, when it goes on the fastest route, it might be the fastest route, but the road you travel on is 2-lane. It's like you don't want to go there type of route, and you should have gone the other way, and it's not as faster. But what I'm understanding is there's a lot more communication with Google and some of the other mapping companies that are working out there to to try to get these driverless cars, and mainly they're talking about just keeping them on major thoroughfares and major streets. So, but we'll see what happens. I mean, who knows?
They're going to have to stop somewhere, though.
Yep, exactly.
They're going to want to get out of one.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
guys, this is Ann. I'm still here. My phone died. It wasn't hooked into its battery like I thought. So I'm still here. But I'm just, yeah.
I wonder where you went.
We can hear you. We can hear you real well.
And Mr. Menace had one more comment just regarding the open space on Appian Way. I'm afraid I have the old specific or the regular specific plan not as part of the agenda, so I can't reference the page numbers we've got.
No, yeah, there's some area. Most of that's owned by private property, believe it or not. Even though it looks like it's open space, it's a lot of that's owned by private property. So we would have to get some easements. We would have to work with those property owners to, especially the ones that back up onto Appian. Where is it? Because I just was meeting with some of those property owners about some of their about that area. They wanted to move their fence back by, they wanted to move their fence back by 30, 40 feet because that was actually their property. And so, yeah, there's actually a lot of those properties are there. It's open space, but it's privately owned. So we would have to work with property owners to get easements, to get trails back there and do that kind of stuff.
And again, 10 years ago, when you're starting to get into things like downturns, if we didn't have an instant way to figure out how to fund it, it wasn't going to happen. Right. And parks are expensive for cities. And so it would really take a lot of doing in order to have something like that occur. Well, there is a piece of property when you cross over Appian and it becomes Pinion, I think. When you go down a little ways in, there's an area that has a little bit of a slope on it, like a kind of flattish area. That was something that was bought in the teens, 2012, 13, 14, 15, right around in there.
Right.
That was, it's there. It's it was like a brand new park space, but again, there was no money at the time to develop it.
And it's still privately owned because it was part of a development project that never. There were some other areas. There were some other areas down by Michael Court, down in that area. Some open space area that was also looked at for potential development in private land. So, I mean, there are areas that we probably could do that with. It's just we would have to go to those property owners and develop a plan and discuss it with them and kind of look, as part of our, our City of Pinole bike plan type thing and trails, bike and trail plan and to work with those owners to help us do that. Yeah. And get those easements.
So not everything is cut and dry when you're trying to do a city. So
none of those open spaces look open, but they're not as open as we would like them to be.
and the way you find out about that is someone who puts 5 houses on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's usually how we discover that they were not open. But no, a lot of those areas are open space areas. We just have to work with the property owners to be able to get those things.
Sometimes it's an access problem because you have to go through somebody else, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, David, this is a really good start on something we could talk about for years. And somewhere in between, we maybe have a couple of solutions we'd figure out, With this particular group, I think that would be highly possible. But I'm looking forward to more things you're going to be presenting to us in terms of this kind of thought. And I'm sure that we're going to even have even more insight and maybe some ideas that could come to fruition. So.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm probably going to do, I just want to give that kind of introductory. Probably what I'll probably do is do it corridor by corridor because a lot of the plan is broken up into each corridor. So I've got to go back through and kind of break everything up and make sure I've got the right corridor with the right corridor and be able to get those projects on there. So that was kind of this is my first kind of like shot at it. And the next one you'll see will actually be I'll probably start with San Pablo. The San Pablo corridor, and just it'll all be about opportunities and constraints. It'll be about the zoning and land use. It'll be about all that in that particular corridor. and then we'll kind of work through the corridors.
Yeah, that makes
sense.
Kind of, well, that one's the most diverse. That's the most, essentially, in some ways, that has the most opportunity.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things going on there.
Yeah. So we take a look at that. And the specific plan did a nice job in the back in terms of outlining, how many units that were assumed that they would have, how much retail development, how much, those types of things. So those are things that, we'll try and look and put together as part of that corridor plan.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Okay. So now I'm at H, City Planners Commissioners Report. I guess I'm going to go back to you, David.
Thank you. I've got a few items, just a few. Just kind of give you an update of where we are with some of these development projects. Vista Woods is coming down the pike here pretty quick. It'll probably be at your September 13th meeting is what we're looking at right now. Vista Woods and 2151 Appian are actually 2801 Pinole Valley Road and 2151 Appian Village. We've got all the environmental contract. We got the environmental contracts pretty much signed and ready to go for those projects, and so we'll be starting the environmentals on those. And we're already accumulating information from them. I mean, we've kind of been working with the consultants because we're using M Group to do all four projects, and so the remaining 4 projects. So we're working with them on getting studies turned in, and right now, so we're working with them on getting those documents done. And Michael's coordinating a lot of that effort right now. So those 4 projects are there. Hopefully we'll have them all up here by, hopefully we can get them all entitled by January, February. That's the goal. As long as there aren't big problems out there aren't, that we're looking, and we're working with these projects. Pinole Vista and both, all the 3, 2801 Pinole Valley Road, Pinole Vista and Appian Village are more standard projects. I mean, they do have affordability. Components, but most of those, they're meeting a lot more of the city requirements. I mean, they are density bonus. They are asking for some concessions, but none of those 3 projects are 100% affordable. So they're between 15 and 20%. So we'll be working with them on. So when we bring those projects to you, you'll have a little more stuff to be able to work with. Email addresses, because I know Ann's going to ask me that question. I'm working with Heather right now, and we are, and we don't think it's a problem. So hopefully we'll be able to work with IT and get those to you fairly shortly in terms of emails and addresses. And so, and Frankie had a request, and I'll have that. You got my email on that, Frankie. So everything's good to go on that. Okay, good. Okay. I did want to let you know that we'll be starting the housing element process here pretty quick and getting our RFP out. And we've got some LEAP funding and some REAP funding, which are local action community dollars through our transportation authority to help do those elements. So we'll be starting to get that out. We also have planning commission interviews this week to fill our final spot. So hopefully at the next meeting we'll have a full commission of 7 members. With that, we are still maintaining a pretty hefty building load. We're still getting projects in. That seems to not have slowed down on us, so that's a good thing. So those more people are still remodeling. They're still doing projects. And so we're getting those out, getting that done. I'm trying to think what else. I did find out regarding the mitigation for the trees on Sprouts. Thank you, Ann. After talking with Tamara right before she left again, basically what had happened is because the West County Storm Drain Protection District basically said no trees near or around the creek around that area. There was supposedly some enhanced landscaping that was supposed to be done in the medians with that project, as well as there's supposed to be, I think, some signage but I'm not sure that all got signed off. But I do know that from talking to Tamara is that was the offset for not being able to put the trees in the creek. Now, regarding the trail that's behind Sprouts and all that, most of that is on the private property, and we're working with the property owners to get that maintained and get that stuff moving. So that's kind of where we're at with those with that projects.
Okay, great. So I guess the only thing following up on that is, I remember talking with Tamara about the enhanced landscaping and signage,
right.
But it obviously hasn't happened. So
I don't think there was a place where it was designated. I just think it was an issue that's what they were going to do. I don't know. I'd have to pull out Gateway's landscape plan to see what the difference is and if there were changes to that.
Well,
that was the final agreement.
We can perhaps talk more about that offline.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Just so I will send you an email tomorrow just regarding some of that, because they're just so that there's a way that perhaps we can use those trees elsewhere. We had been looking at it. So
right, okay.
And they had talked about potentially just giving money, which we weren't totally excited about. But I'll email you tomorrow. And
okay, good.
And update everyone next week, our next meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Thank you.
David, it seems like there was in their original landscape plan for that, there was something that talked about that, signage and things like that.
Well, when I went through the conditions of approval, I mean, they had their standard landscaping but I don't think they knew about the creek and stuff until after the project got approved. So because I didn't see any what I would say less of a landscape strip along the creek and in other places in the project, because after Tamara told me that, I went back and looked. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that we got accepted what you guys originally approved in 2015, and when they came in and started building in 2017 and whenever in 2018, that's when that mitigation or that switch off was about ready to happen. So that's why I don't think anything got amended. So because when I looked at the landscape plans, I didn't see like a new delta or a new delta on the landscape plan or anything of that nature for a later date. So that's why I think it was decided upon, but I don't think it was implemented.
What's really weird about all that is it seems like doing things like planting trees and things like that would be a benefit, but they're saying no, don't do it. But they let them build that fish bridge under the freeway, and that was concrete when they did.
Yeah.
So
go try not to get into those. That's outside our jurisdiction. No. It's something that it's amazing what some.
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Next thing is communications. Anyone have anything they'd like to throw out or on their minds? Anyone have anything like that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering. You got several of my questions there, Mr. Hannum. I'll keep hammering on a couple others. The tree replacement on San Pablo Avenue at 2518. It's just kind of hanging out there. I mean, is there any kind of condition within what time period they have to replant a tree?
Well, I'll let Michael speak to that because he's been working on that project.
Okay.
Yeah, I can respond to that. So what we've been doing is working with the Public Works Department on pricing for the tree and the grate and the maintenance. So we're going to have the applicant basically do a deposit. The kind of what the sticking point is finding a grate. I think we've located the manufacturer who still is making them. So we're basically going to be, I don't have any idea on timing there, but we will be getting a deposit from the property owner.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit more background. he was actually hoping to to put in a curb cut there to access the property for parking, but that's not possible. So, so I think there was more to the tree removal than we originally thought. So
yeah, it kind of looked that way in looking at that. That's unfortunate that they did not do their homework. So
yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Michael, for pursuing that. And then, David, the Pinole Square landscaping plan.
Yeah, they still need to submit. They just came in with an extension for their project. So
Okay.
I'm hoping we are still processing their parcel map, and so what I'm hoping is that will generate some of their movement on their landscape plan. So as of now, they haven't submitted anything yet. And they said they would submit when they submit for their building permit. And so I thought that was going to happen in February. We're now coming on September. But they did ask they were granted a 1-year extension, and that's per their code. And so hopefully we'll be getting something here shortly from them.
Right. I hope so. To get that developed, it would be really excellent to have a new study there. So
definitely
great. Okay, thank you so much. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then also just as a reminder to everybody, this would be a good spot if you had something in mind that could become an agenda item. This could be brought up in, during this communication period. Like Simon's idea to have another specific area plan. So that's a good example. So if you have anything and that you think would be something that we should think about, that this would be the time to say that. You don't have to have anything now, but it's just a thought for future meetings. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add or mention?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let the commission know I didn't get to work with you very much, because I only was working part-time kind of behind the scenes for the last few months. But next week is my last week. I've accepted a position with the city of San Bruno as the planning manager there. So, but I wish you well as you move forward. Pinole's just a wonderful, wonderful place. And I see nothing but great potential as you move forward. So I wish you well.
Okay. Well,
congratulations.
Yeah. San Bruno's a nice town to work in.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
We are definitely going to miss him.
Bet you are.
And your influence keeps growing and growing, Michael. So I guess that's pretty much it. So our next meeting is going to be regular meeting on September 13th at 7 o'clock. And so I call this meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks. All right,
everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
night.
Hey, David.
Yes, sir.
I see you met my friend